At my sister's wedding, my 8-year-old son grabbed my hand. His face had gone pale. He was trembling. "Mom, we have to leave right now." I frowned. "What's wrong?" He scanned the room like he was afraid someone was watching us. Then he shoved his phone into my hand. "Mom, just watch." The moment I saw what was on that screen, my blood ran cold. My sister Lauren had always believed appearances could fix almost anything. A strained relationship could be repaired with the right family photo. A bad financial decision could be softened with a tasteful explanation. A wedding that cost far more than anyone could reasonably afford could become an investment in memories. If the flowers were imported, and the photographer had enough followers on Instagram. So naturally. Her wedding took place at Willow Creek Estate, a renovated horse farm 40 minutes outside Columbus, Ohio. The property had white fencing, rolling fields, a restored red barn, and a stone terrace overlooking a pond that looked almost too perfect to be real. Every corner had been arranged for photographs, soft linen signs, antique lanterns, gold-framed seating charts, and pale pink roses tucked into places where roses had no practical reason to be. By 9 that morning, I had already fixed 3 problems Lauren didn't know existed. The florist had delivered the wrong number of centerpieces. 2 table snorts had been assigned the same number. The caterer's manager had pulled me aside near the service entrance and quietly explained that the final payment had not cleared. "I'm sure it's just a bank delay," I told her. She gave me the careful smile people use when they know they are speaking to someone who is not responsible for the mess, but maybe the only person capable of cleaning it up. "We need confirmation before dinner service," she said. "I'll handle it." That had been my role in the family for as long as I could remember. Lauren created emergencies. My mother panicked about them. I handled them. At 36, I should have known better than to keep accepting the assignment. "Mom, my tie feels weird." I turned and found Ethan standing behind me in his navy suit, tugging at his collar. At 8 years old, he had Mark's dark hair and my tendency to study a room before speaking. He looked handsome, uncomfortable, and deeply suspicious of formal clothing. "Come here." I loosened the knot slightly, then smoothed his collar. "Better?" "A little. You only have to wear it until after the pictures. That's what you said about the shoes." I smiled despite myself. "The shoes stay." He sighed with the exhausted patience of a much older man. Then he lifted the old phone I had given him for games, videos, and emergencies. It had no active cellular plan, but it worked on Wi-Fi. And Ethan had recently become fascinated with making short movies. "I'm filming behind-the-scenes stuff for Aunt Lauren." "That sounds dangerous." She said she wanted candid moments. She does not know what candid means. Ethan grinned and ran toward the bridal suite before I could warn him not to record anyone getting dressed. I watched him go, and for a few seconds, the pressure in my chest eased. Then Mark walked through the barn doors. My husband looked exactly the way everyone expected him to look. Polished, relaxed, and effortlessly useful. His charcoal suit fit perfectly. His hair was neatly styled. He carried 2 boxes from the bakery, as if he had personally rescued the wedding cake from a burning building. "There he is," my mother said, hurrying toward him. "Thank God, Mark. The guest book table still isn't set up." "I've got it, Martha." He kissed her cheek, handed the boxes to a server, then crossed the room and placed one hand against my lower back. To anyone watching, it was affectionate. To me, it felt staged. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you. You could try sounding like you mean it." I kept my smile in place because my aunt was standing 10 feet away. "You snorts could try saying it when nobody's watching." His expression tightened for half a second, then softened again. That was Mark's gift. He could move from irritation to charm before anyone else noticed the shift. We had been living separately for almost 3 months. He had rented an apartment near his real estate office, though he called it terrace, and insisted our marriage was not over until we had given counseling a real chance. We had already spent 9 months in counseling. Mostly, Mark had used those sessions to explain why my reactions were the actual problem. Lauren knew we were separated. My mother did not. Mark had argued that announcing it before the wedding would be selfish. "Your sister gets one day," he had said. "We can keep our problems private for 24 hours, miss," I had agreed. Partly because I didn't want to hurt Lauren, and partly because I was tired of being told that honesty was cruelty whenever the truth inconvenienced someone. Now Mark held my waist while relatives smiled at us. You said you needed me to sign something tonight, I murmured. Just some banking paperwork. What kind? Nothing complicated. A refinance adjustment. I turned slightly. For the house? We'll talk later. Before I could press him, Lauren appeared in the doorway of the bridal suite, a silk robe and a look of controlled panic. Claire, I need you. Of course she did. For the next 2 hours, I pinned a loose hem, found a missing earring, called the rental company about 6 absent chairs, and reassured my mother that gray clouds did not automatically mean a tornado. Through it all, I kept noticing Mark and Lauren together. Once near the catering kitchen, again beside the hallway leading to the private offices. Later, outside the bridal suite, speaking in low voices until Lauren saw me and abruptly asked whether I had checked the champagne count. It was odd, but not impossible. Mark had helped arrange part of the financing for Daniel's renovation company, and Lauren often treated him like an unofficial business advisor. Still, something in the way they separated bothered me. Shortly before the ceremony, Ethan found me near the welcome table. Dad was talking to Aunt Lauren in the back hallway, he said. About what? I don't know. They stopped when somebody came by. I adjusted his boutonniere. They're probably dealing with wedding stuff. He looked unconvinced. Can I use the bathroom? Take the hall past the bridal suite, the second door on the left. He nodded and hurried away. The ceremony began 20 minutes later. I stood beside Lauren beneath an arch covered in roses, while Daniel waited at the front in a dark blue suit, visibly fighting tears. Lauren looked radiant. My mother cried before the music even changed. Mark sat in the second row with Ethan's empty chair beside him. I glanced toward the barn doors. No Ethan. The officiant began speaking about trust, partnership, and the courage required to build a life with another person. Then Ethan slipped into the room. He did not return to his seat. He walked straight toward me. At first, I thought he was sick. His face was colorless and his arms were rigid at his sides. When he reached the edge of the wedding party, he grabbed my hand hard. Mom, he whispered, we have to leave right now. I crouched slightly, trying not to draw attention. What's wrong? His eyes moved toward Mark, then Lauren. He pulled out his phone and pushed it into my hand. Just watch. The video had started in the hallway. The camera pointed toward the floor, catching polished shoes, a strip of patterned carpet, and the bottom of a half-open door. Then I heard Mark's voice. She'll sign after the reception. Lauren answered quieter. What if she reads it? She won't. And if she does, we go with plan B. There was a pause. What about Ethan? Lauren asked. Mark's reply was clear. Once I have temporary custody, Claire won't control the trust anymore. My fingers went numb. Lauren whispered, You already used her signature. That could be fraud. Mark gave a short laugh. It only becomes fraud if she refuses to validate it. The camera shifted. For 1 second, I saw a folder in Mark's hand. My name was printed across the front. Then Lauren said, After everything she's done for me, I still can't believe we're doing this. Mark's voice turned cold. Then stop thinking of it as stealing. Think of it as borrowing from someone who has more than she needs. The video ended. I looked toward the altar. My sister was smiling beneath $1,000 worth of flowers. My husband was watching me from the second row. I sent the video to myself, uploaded it to cloud storage, and texted Rachel Kim, my attorney. Emergency. Possible fraud involving Ethan's trust. Call me now. A shadow fell across the phone. There you are, Mark said pleasantly. I've been looking for you. I locked the screen. His gaze moved from my face to Ethan's. Is something wrong? I forced myself to smile. Not yet. For the next 30 seconds, I forgot where I was. The music, the flowers, the guests, everything faded into the background. All I could hear was Mark's voice. Once I have temporary custody, not because he wanted to spend more time with Ethan, not because he thought I was an unfit mother, because he wanted control of my son's trust. I looked down at Ethan. His little chest was rising too fast. His eyes kept darting around the room, searching every face. I squeezed his hand. You did the right thing. His voice cracked. Are you mad? My heart broke. No, sweetheart. I brushed his hair away from his forehead. I'm proud of you. He finally took one slow breath. I thought Dad was going to see me. He didn't. But what if he did? I leaned closer. Then I would have protected you. Those words came out before I even thought about them. Because they were true. No matter what happened next, that was my job. The wedding ceremony continued. Lauren was saying her vows now. I promise to always be honest with you. The words hit me like a slap. Honest. I stared at my little sister. The same little girl whose scraped knees I'd cleaned, whose science projects I'd stayed up late helping finish, whose rent I'd quietly covered 3 years earlier after she lost her job. She couldn't even look me in the eye now. Not once. She kept staring at Daniel, at the guests, at the photographer. Anywhere but me. She already knew. She knew I wasn't supposed to hear that conversation. She just didn't know that I already had. I slipped my phone into my clutch. Then I leaned toward Ethan. I need you to do something. What? I want you to stay with Grandma until dinner. His eyes widened. What about you? I have to take care of something. He hesitated. Are you leaving? No, not yet. But I need you somewhere safe. He nodded. I kissed his forehead. Go sit with Grandma. He walked toward the front row. Mom immediately wrapped an arm around him, assuming he'd gotten nervous before the ceremony. Good, let her think that. For now. Yeah. The applause erupted as Lauren and Daniel kissed. Everyone stood. Everyone smiled. Everyone celebrated. I stood there clapping while my entire marriage collapsed inside my chest. Mark found me almost immediately. There you are. He slipped beside me. You disappeared. I was with Ethan. Everything okay? I looked directly at him. He smiled exactly the way he'd smiled for 18 years. Warmed. Completely fake. He got nervous. Mark nodded sympathetically. Poor buddy. Then he lowered his voice. After dinner, let's find a quiet place. We still have those papers. There it was. Not 20 minutes after discussing fraud, he was already trying to finish the job. I smiled. Sure. Relief flashed across his face. It lasted less than a second, but I saw it. Nah. Cocktail hour began outside on the terrace. Guests laughed over champagne. A jazz trio played near the pond. Children chased each other across the lawn. Nobody knew that my life had just split into 2 pieces. The life before Ethan handed me that phone and everything after. My own phone vibrated. Rachel Kim. I stepped away from the crowd. Rachel. I watched the video. No greeting. No small talk. Her voice had changed. What do I do? You stay calm. I can do that. No confrontation. I wasn't planning to. Good. I heard papers moving on her desk. Claire. Listen carefully. I'm listening. That video is important. Is it enough? It's enough to make me very concerned. She chose every word carefully. It shows intent. It suggests fraud. It suggests a custody strategy tied to money. But it doesn't prove the documents themselves are fraudulent. So don't warn him. I closed my eyes. I wasn't going to. He thinks he's ahead. Keep it that way. What about the paperwork? If he asks you to sign anything, she paused. Don't. What if he pressures me? Take pictures. What if he won't let me? Find an excuse. What about Ethan? Keep him away from every conversation. I looked across the lawn. My son was feeding breadcrumbs to ducks with my mother. Rachel continued. Tonight, back up that video 3 different ways. Already sent it to myself. Good. Cloud storage? Do it. What else? I'll contact the trust administrator first thing tomorrow. She became even more serious. And Claire, yeah? If there's any chance that trust already been used, she exhaled slowly. We're moving fast. I returned to the reception just as family photos began. Lauren linked her arm through mine. You disappeared. I had to check on Ethan. She smiled for the photographer. He okay? He's fine. Another flash. Another forced smile. She whispered without moving her lips. Thanks for helping today. I looked at her. Helping? That word almost made me laugh. Instead, I asked quietly, Lauren, are you happy? Her smile flickered. What kind of question is that? The kind your sister asks. She hesitated. Then the photographer called, eyes here, another flash. Lauren smiled again, too quickly, too perfectly, yee. Dinner was served inside the barn. Guests filled every table. Toasts began. Daniel's best man told embarrassing college stories. My mother cried again. People laughed. Then the catering manager quietly approached Lauren. Lauren's smile vanished. She glanced toward Mark. The 2 of them stepped outside. I waited 10 seconds, then I followed. They didn't see me. The payment still hasn't gone through, Lauren whispered. It will. They're threatening to hold dessert. I said I'll handle it. What if Claire— Stop saying her name. Lauren rubbed her temples. This wasn't supposed to happen. It won't if you keep your nerve. I stepped backward before they noticed me. Rachel had been right. Don't confront. Observe. Collect. Let them keep talking. People who believe they've won always say too much. The half an hour later, Mark found me near the dessert table. There you are. He held a manila folder. Exactly like the one I'd seen in Ethan's video. I figured we'd get this out of the way. He smiled. 5 minutes. He led me toward a small office near the back hallway. The same door. He placed the folder on the desk, nothing complicated. I opened it. Mortgage documents. Loan disclosures, electronic authorization forms. Then my stomach tightened. There it was, the Bennett Family Education Trust. Ethan's trust. Exactly where it had no business being. I kept reading. Mark watched me carefully, so I looked up. Why is Ethan's trust listed here? His expression didn't change. It isn't. I slid the page across the desk. It literally is. He glanced down. Oh. As if he'd never noticed. That's standard language. It doesn't look standard. It is. I kept my voice calm. Then explain it. It's just collateral language. My son's education fund isn't collateral. It won't actually be touched. Then why is it there? Mark sighed. You always do this. Do what? You overthink everything. There it was. The familiar move. Not an explanation. A criticism. He leaned closer. Claire, his voice softened. I know things have been difficult, but this helps everyone. I just need your signature. I looked at the signature page. My name waiting. My pulse slowed. Strangely, I wasn't scared anymore. I looked him straight in the eye. I'd rather have Rachel review it first. His jaw tightened. Why? Because she's my attorney. The room went silent. For the first time all day, Mark stopped smiling. Mark stared at me for several long seconds. Then he laughed, not because anything was funny, because he thought laughter could make me doubt myself. Rachel, he said, seriously? I closed the folder. Seriously? You hired a lawyer without telling me? I hired one 3 months ago. His smile disappeared. For the separation? The muscles in his jaw tightened. I thought we agreed we weren't turning this into a war. I met his eyes. I thought we agreed you wouldn't lie to me. Neither of us spoke. Outside the office, I could hear music drifting through the barn. Someone laughed, glasses clinked. The wedding carried on as if nothing had changed. Mark took a slow breath. You're making this bigger than it is. Then explain the trust. I already did. No, you dismissed it. It isn't being used. Then remove it. It doesn't work that way. I stood. I'm not signing anything tonight. His voice hardened. The deadline is midnight. I guess you'll miss it. You don't understand how much depends on this. I looked straight at him. I think I'm finally starting to. I picked up my purse. As I reached the door, his voice stopped me. If you walk away, I turned. This is going to get ugly. For 18 years, that sentence had worked. Whenever we argued, it was always the same. If I questioned him, things would get ugly. If I asked for proof, things would get ugly. If I refused to apologize first, things would get ugly. Eventually, I had learned that ugly usually meant days of silence, emotional manipulation, or long speeches about how difficult I was to live with. This time, the word meant nothing. I opened the door. I didn't make it ugly, Mark. You did. I walked away. I stayed at the reception another hour. Not because I wanted to, because Rachel had been clear. Act normal, don't tip your hand. So I smiled for pictures. I congratulated Lauren and Daniel. I hugged relatives. I even danced once with Ethan because he insisted. For anyone watching, I looked like a sister celebrating a wedding. Inside, I was building a timeline. Every conversation, every document, every lie. I wasn't gathering memories anymore. I was gathering evidence. No. By the time Ethan and I got home that night, it was almost 11. He fell asleep in the back seat before we reached the driveway. I carried him inside. His little arms wrapped around my neck even in his sleep. When I tucked him into bed, he opened one eye. Mom? I'm here. Are we okay? The question nearly broke me. I kissed his forehead. We're going to be. He closed his eyes again. I stood beside his bed for a long time. Then I walked into the kitchen, opened my laptop, and copied the video into 3 different places. Cloud storage, an external hard drive, a secure folder Rachel had shared with me. Only after everything had uploaded did I allow myself to cry. Not loudly, just enough to let the fear out. So, what, T? Rachel called me at 7:00 the next morning. I've already contacted the trust administrator. So early? They opened at 8 lakh. What did they say? They're checking whether anyone has attempted to use the trust as collateral. I sat down. If they did, we'll know soon. She paused. I also need you to bring me every financial document you've received from Mark in the last 2 years. Everything? Everything. Tax returns, mortgage statements, bank records, retirement accounts, business emails, loan applications. Anything with your signature. I'll start looking. I have a feeling we're not dealing with one bad document. Her voice became very quiet. I think we're looking at a pattern. By noon, my dining room looked like an accountant's office. Folders covered every chair. Old tax returns, insurance policies, mortgage paperwork, closing documents from our refinance, statements from Ethan's education trust. I hadn't looked at some of them in years, mostly because I'd trusted Mark. He handled the finances. That had been our arrangement. I managed our home. He managed investments. It had seemed practical. Now it felt dangerously naive. I compared signatures, dates, account numbers. Something caught my eye. A home equity withdrawal. $38,000 8 months earlier. I frowned. I had no memory of approving it. I kept digging. Another transfer, $22,000. Then snorts another, $15,000. Each one labeled as business expenses. None of them looked familiar. I called Rachel. I found something. Email it. 5 minutes later, she called back. Claire, yeah? Did Mark ever own an LLC with Lauren? No. According to these transfers papers shuffled. Someone thought he did. Ski by late afternoon. Rachel had answers. None of them were good. There's an LLC. What? It was registered 18 months ago. My sister, Mark and Lauren are both listed. I couldn't speak. Rachel continued. It received multiple transfers from accounts connected to your household. Why would they? We don't know yet. But that's where we're looking. I leaned back in my chair. Images from the past started fitting together. Lauren calling because she was a little short this month. Mark insisting we postpone replacing our leaking roof. The expensive bridal shower. The luxury honeymoon. The designer dress Lauren claimed she'd gotten on sale. It hadn't been on sale. I'd paid for it without ever knowing. She, the trust administrator, finally returned Rachel's call. She called me immediately. They tried. My heart stopped. What? 3 weeks ago. They attempted to list Ethan's trust as secondary security for a commercial loan. I gripped the edge of the table. Did it go through? No. I closed my eyes. Relief flooded my body. Why not? The administrator refused authorization. I blinked. They needed both trustees. Which means they were missing your approval, I whispered. So that's why he needed me to sign. Rachel didn't answer. She didn't have to. Everything suddenly made sense. The pressure, the fake deadline, the folder, the wedding. He hadn't wanted paperwork. He'd wanted my signature. That afternoon, Rachel filed an emergency motion asking the probate court to temporarily suspend Mark's authority over Ethan's trust until the investigation was complete. She also contacted the bank's fraud department. By evening, the trust had been frozen. No withdrawals, no changes, no new loans. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt like I could breathe. See. The next surprise arrived just before dinner. Daniel called. I almost ignored it. I answered, "Hello?" His voice sounded exhausted. "Claire, I need to ask you something." "Okay, did you contact First National Bank?" Through my attorney. A long silence. "They froze our business account." "I know. They said there's a fraud investigation." "There is." Another silence. Finally, he asked, "What the hell is going on?" I looked out the kitchen window. Ethan was throwing a baseball against the backyard fence. He looked happy, carefree, exactly the way an 8-year-old should look. I turned back to the phone. "Daniel," I said quietly, "did you ever actually watch me sign those loan papers?" Silence, longer this time. Then no. I closed my eyes. I didn't think so. His breathing changed. "Claire, I think someone lied to both of us. CLARE that night. Rachel sent me one final document. It wasn't from the bank. It wasn't from the trust. It came from family court. Someone had started preparing custody paperwork weeks earlier. My hands shook as I opened the draft. Most of it was unfinished. Then I reached the witness statements. The first name belonged to Mark. Meal the second made me stop breathing. Lauren Hayes, my own sister. Under penalty of perjury, she claimed I was emotionally unstable, that I neglected Ethan, that she feared for his safety in my care. At the bottom of the page was a sentence I read 3 times before it finally sank in. I believe Ethan would be safer living with his father. B. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I whispered the only question that mattered. When did you stop being my sister? I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was afraid, because my mind refused to stop connecting pieces that should never have existed in the same puzzle. The forged signature, the trust, the custody papers, Lauren's sworn statement. For hours, I kept asking myself the same question. How long had they been planning this? Months? A year? Long enough that my sister had looked me in the eyes at Thanksgiving, accepted Christmas presents for Ethan, hugged me on my birthday, all while helping my husband build a case against me. At 3:30 in the morning, I stopped asking questions that couldn't yet be answered. I started focusing on the ones that mattered. How do I protect my son? How do I protect the evidence? How do I make sure they never get another chance? Rachel already had a plan. By 9, I was sitting across from her conference table. Legal pads, coffee cups, bank statements. Everything was neatly organized. Rachel wasn't emotional. That's why I'd hired her. We're going to move quickly, she said. How quickly? As quickly as the law allows. She slid a folder toward me. I'd already filed for temporary sole authority over Ethan's trust. I nodded. What about custody? Next. What about Mark? We don't chase him. She looked directly at me. We make him chase us. I like that answer. More than I expected. She continued. This isn't revenge, no, it's accountability. I smiled for the first time in 2 days. That's a better word. Me. The paperwork took most of the morning. Emergency financial orders, preservation notices, requests that neither Mark nor Lauren destroy emails, text messages, electronic signatures, cloud files, or banking records. Rachel explained every document before I signed it. The contrast hit me immediately. She wanted me to understand every page. Mark had wanted me to sign without reading. That difference alone said everything about both of them. Yeah. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Mark. I let it ring. Then again. Then again. Finally, a text appeared. We need to talk. I ignored it. Another message. You're making a huge mistake. Then another. Rachel is poisoning you against me. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because even now, he couldn't imagine I had reached my own conclusions. Everything had to be someone else's influence. Someone else's fault. 20 minutes later, my doorbell camera alerted me. Mark. He stood on my porch, holding flowers. Of course he did. To anyone driving by, he looked like a husband trying to save his marriage. I watched him through my phone. He rang again. I didn't move. Finally, he spoke toward the door. Claire, please. Silence. See, I know you're home. Still nothing. His voice became tighter. This has gotten completely out of control. I opened the camera microphone. What do you want? Relief flashed across his face. There you are. I'm not opening the door. We need to talk. We're talking. Not like this. Actually, I looked at Rachel, who nodded. This works just fine. He forced a smile. I think you're overreacting. I think you're on camera. His eyes flicked toward the doorbell. Good. Let him remember. Everything mattered now. He lowered his voice. You froze the trust. Yes. You froze business accounts. Yes. People are getting hurt. I leaned closer to the speaker. You forged my signature. His face changed. Only for a second, but it changed. I don't know what Rachel told you. I watched the video. Nothing. Not a word. He knew exactly which video. After several seconds, he sighed. It wasn't what it looked like. Really? You took it out of context. My 8-year-old recorded the context. His shoulders dropped. This doesn't have to destroy us. I almost admired his confidence. Even now. He still thought the marriage was the leverage. It wasn't. Ethan was. And he'd already lost that leverage. I'll have my attorney contact yours. I disconnected. He stood there another full minute. Then he left the flowers on my porch. I threw them away before Ethan came home. Yeah. That afternoon, Lauren called. Once, twice.
5 times.
Finally, I answered. She was crying, real tears, or very convincing ones, Claire. I didn't respond. I know you're angry. I didn't want any of this. I closed my eyes. You signed the affidavit. Silence. I was scared. So was Ethan. She cried harder. Mark said I don't care what Mark said. He told me it was only a backup. A backup? In case the divorce got ugly. I laughed. A bitter, exhausted laugh. You helped make sure it would. She kept crying. You don't understand. No, I understand perfectly, she whispered. I never thought he'd actually use it. I felt something inside me finally settle. For 2 days I'd been hoping she'd tell me she'd refused, hoping she'd never signed it, hoping there was some explanation that would let me keep my sister. There wasn't. She had made her choice. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I believed she was. I also knew it changed nothing. "I'm sure you are. Can we meet?" "No, please. No, I'll fix this." "You can't." Another silence, then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Can you unfreeze the accounts?" There it was. Not "How's Ethan?" Not "How are you?" The money. Always the money. "The caterer hasn't been paid," she whispered. "The florist is threatening to sue." "Our employees," I interrupted gently. "The employees didn't do anything wrong. They'll lose paychecks." Gave me pause. Rachel had warned me about this. Collateral damage. Innocent people. "I'll tell my attorney to cooperate on legitimate payroll." Lauren sounded relieved, but not $1 connected to Ethan's trust. Her relief disappeared. "Claire." No, the conversation ended there. Later that evening, Daniel requested a meeting. Rachel insisted we meet in her office. He looked terrible. His wedding ring was already gone. I didn't know. Rachel said nothing. Daniel looked at me. I swear, I believed him. Not completely innocent. But not fully informed either. He opened a folder. I found these emails, invoices, transfer records. Lauren had hidden thousands of dollars in business expenses. Mark had approved every transfer. Daniel rubbed his face. I asked where the money came from. And I let myself believe the answers. Rachel finally spoke. "Choosing not to ask is still a choice." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know. I've already agreed to cooperate." He looked at me. "I'm sorry." I appreciated the apology. It didn't erase the damage. But unlike Mark, Daniel wasn't asking to escape consequences. He was accepting them. That mattered. 3 weeks later, we gathered in family court for the emergency hearing. Mark looked confident. His attorney looked expensive. Mine looked prepared. The judge reviewed financial filings, custody requests, bank notices. Then Mark's attorney stood. "Your Honor, Mrs. Bennett is acting out of anger over the breakdown of her marriage." Rachel didn't react. "She has frozen legitimate business activity and is attempting to alienate a loving father." The judge looked toward Rachel. She stood calmly. "Permission to play Exhibit 7? Granted." Rachel connected her laptop. The courtroom filled with static. Then Ethan's shaky video began. Mark's voice echoed through the speakers. "Once I have temporary custody, Claire won't control the trust anymore." No one moved. Lauren's voice followed. "You already used her signature." Then Mark again. "It only becomes fraud if she refuses to validate it." Silence. Absolute silence. The judge slowly removed his glasses. Then he looked directly at Mark. His voice was calm. Almost too calm. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "did you just discuss seeking custody of your child to gain control of that child's trust?" Mark opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time since this nightmare began, he had no answer. The silence inside that courtroom lasted only a few seconds. It felt much longer. Mark finally cleared his throat. "That recording doesn't show the entire conversation." Rachel didn't even look at him. "It shows enough." The judge folded his hands. "I agree." Mark's attorney stood immediately. "Your Honor, the recording lacks context." Rachel answered before the judge could. "Then Mr. Bennett is welcome to provide the missing context." She turned toward Mark. "We'd all like to hear why custody of your son was connected to control of his trust." Mark looked at his attorney. His attorney looked back at him. Neither of them spoke. The judge made a few notes. Then he looked at me. "Mrs. Bennett, until this matter is fully investigated, I'm granting your request for temporary sole authority over Ethan's education trust." I felt my shoulders relax for the first time in weeks, he continued. "Mr. Bennett will have no authority to access, modify, or use those assets." Mark lowered his head. The judge wasn't finished. "Temporary primary physical custody of Ethan will remain with Mrs. Bennett." My eyes filled with tears, not because I had won, because my son was safe. Finally, the judge looked back at Mark. "You will receive parenting time under a temporary schedule. However, given the financial allegations before this court, I expect complete cooperation with every request made by investigators." He paused. "And Mr. Bennett?" Mark looked up. "If any evidence confirms the forgery alleged here today, your custody position will become substantially more difficult." The hearing ended 20 minutes later, but the consequences were only beginning. Outside the courthouse, reporters weren't waiting. This wasn't a sensational criminal trial. It was an ordinary family court hearing. Ordinary people, ordinary clothes, ordinary lives. That's the thing about betrayal. Most of it happens quietly. Rachel walked beside me toward the parking garage. You handled yourself well. I wanted to scream. I know. I wanted to ask him why. Rachel smiled gently. People like Mark rarely answer that question honestly. She unlocked her car. They usually don't know themselves. Nah. 3 days later, the bank's internal investigation expanded. Mark's real estate brokerage placed him on administrative leave. Not because he'd been charged with a crime, because financial misconduct involving signatures and trust accounts was something the company couldn't ignore. He called me that evening. I answered, only because Rachel wanted every conversation documented. You happy now? His voice sounded different, smaller. I've never been happy about any of this. I lost 3 listings today. I didn't respond. My broker suspended me. Still nothing. They're treating me like a criminal. You forged my signature. I was trying to save us. I closed my eyes. No. You were trying to save yourself. You don't understand the pressure I was under. I understand exactly what pressure feels like. I looked toward Ethan, who was doing homework at the kitchen table. I've been living under yours for years. He was quiet. Then he tried a different approach. What am I supposed to tell Ethan? The truth. You know I can't. No. I spoke calmly. You just won't. I ended the call. Lauren didn't wait much longer. She came to my house. This time, she didn't bring tears. She brought our mother. I saw both of them through the front window. Rachel had already warned me this might happen. When people lose legal leverage, she'd said, they often reach for emotional leverage. Mom rang the bell. I opened the door but didn't invite them inside. Claire, she said softly. We need to talk. Lauren couldn't even meet my eyes. Mom continued, honey, families make mistakes. I almost laughed. Mistakes? Forgetting a birthday was a mistake. Backing into someone's mailbox was a mistake. Forging signatures and trying to use custody as a financial weapon wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. Mom looked exhausted. Lauren wants to apologize. I looked at my sister. She finally spoke. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. No, I was jealous. That surprised me. She'd never admitted that before. I've been jealous my whole life. I stayed silent. You always had everything together, I almost interrupted. She kept going. You had the stable job. You bought a house. You were the responsible one. I shook my head. You know what I had? Lauren frowned. I had responsibilities. You saw achievements. You never saw the sacrifices. Mom looked down. Lauren wiped her eyes. I thought she stopped. I thought Mark was right. About what? That you wouldn't really lose anything. My stomach turned. She actually believed that. He said the trust would be replaced. He said it was temporary. He said you'd never even know. I stared at her. And when he started talking about taking Ethan, Lauren broke down again. I told him not to, but you still signed. She nodded, very slowly. Yes. That single word hurt more than every excuse she'd offered, because it was honest. Finally, Mom reached for my hand. Can't we fix this? I looked at both of them. I didn't break it. Neither of them answered. I didn't lie. I didn't steal. I didn't try to take someone's child. I stepped back toward the doorway. When you're ready to accept that, I looked at Lauren. Then maybe we can talk about healing. I closed the door. Not because I hated my sister, because boundaries are sometimes the only language people finally understand. A week later, Daniel called again. I'm filing for divorce. I wasn't surprised. I thought you should hear it from me. I'm sorry. I should have asked more questions. His voice sounded older. I kept telling myself Lauren wouldn't lie to me. I know how that feels. He gave a sad laugh. Yeah, we were quiet for a moment. Then he said something that stayed with me. You know what hurts the most? What? I don't even know when she stopped being the woman I married. After we hung up, I realized I'd asked myself almost the same question. Not about a spouse, about a sister. Sia. The official findings came 2 weeks after the hearing. The bank concluded there was probable evidence of fraudulent documentation. The matter was referred to state investigators. Mark's brokerage terminated his employment. His professional license was suspended pending review. Rachel called me the moment the notices became public. One more thing. What? The prosecutor has offered preliminary discussions. For criminal charges? For a plea agreement. I sat down. What does that mean? It means if Mr. Bennett accepts responsibility early, cooperates fully, and agrees to restitution, he may avoid a lengthy prison sentence. I stared out the window. The maple tree in our front yard had begun turning red. Summer was ending. Everything was changing. Rachel hesitated. There's a condition, I figured. He wants your support. My support? He wants you to write a letter asking the court for leniency. I almost smiled. Even now? After everything, Mark still believed I would rescue him, the same way I always had. Cover the bills. Smooth things over. Explain away the damage. Carry the weight. My phone buzzed, a text from Mark. Do it for Ethan. He needs his father. I read it twice. Then I looked toward the backyard. Ethan was laughing as he threw a tennis ball for our old Labrador. He deserved a father. One who protected him. One who told him the truth. One who never saw him as a bank account with a heartbeat. I opened a blank document. I began to write. Not the letter Mark expected. The one Ethan deserved. I spent nearly 3 hours writing that letter. Not because I didn't know what I wanted to say. Because I wanted to be absolutely certain. I wasn't writing it out of anger. Anger fades. Court records don't. Every sentence would become part of the permanent record. Not just for Mark, but for Ethan someday. If he ever decided to read what happened between his parents, I deleted more paragraphs than I kept. At one point, I realized I had written an entire page about my own pain. I erased all of it. The case wasn't about me anymore. It never really had been. It was about protecting a little boy who had trusted the adults in his life to keep him safe. Only one of us had done that. When I finally finished, I emailed the letter to Rachel. She called 15 minutes later. I've read it. And? You surprised me. I surprised myself. She was quiet for a moment. You didn't ask the court to punish him. No. You also didn't ask the court to forgive him. No. You simply asked the court to hold him accountable. That's all I've ever wanted. Rachel let out a slow breath. This is the strongest letter you could have written. The sentencing hearing took place almost 3 months after Lauren's wedding. By then, autumn had settled over Ohio. The trees outside the courthouse burned with shades of orange and crimson, beautiful enough to make you forget that winter was already on its way. Mark looked older than I remembered. He had lost weight. The confidence that had once filled every room before he entered it had vanished. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked like a man who understood consequences. The prosecutor outlined the agreement. Mark had accepted responsibility for financial fraud related to the forged documents. He had agreed to full financial restitution. He would complete community service, mandatory financial ethics counseling, parenting classes, ongoing therapy. His real estate license would remain suspended, and he would be prohibited from managing fiduciary assets until all legal requirements had been satisfied. The judge turned toward me. Mrs. Bennett. I stood. I've read your letter. He held it in one hand. I found one sentence particularly important. He looked down and read it aloud. I don't want my son to grow up believing his father was destroyed because his mother wanted revenge. But I also don't want him believing that saying I'm sorry erases the consequences of betraying the people who trusted you. The courtroom fell silent. The judge nodded. That is a remarkably balanced statement. He looked toward Mark. Mr. Bennett, this court believes accountability is not the opposite of compassion. He paused. It is compassion for the victims. Mark lowered his head. Sentence was imposed. Not the maximum. Not the minimum. Fair. Exactly what I had hoped for. As we left the courtroom, Mark caught up with me in the hallway. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, I kept thinking you'd save me. I looked at him. I know. You always did. I won't anymore. He nodded once. There was nothing left to argue. Nothing left to manipulate. For the first time in 18 years, our conversation ended without either of us pretending. Lauren reached out several times over the following months. At first, I didn't answer. Not because I hated her. Because trust doesn't grow back simply because someone misses it. It grows through consistent change. She started therapy. She sold her luxury SUV to help repay part of the civil settlement. She moved out of the expensive apartment she'd insisted she deserved and rented a small place across town. Mom told me Lauren had found a second job on weekends. I listened. I didn't comment. One afternoon, almost a year after the wedding, a handwritten letter arrived. Not an email, not a text, a real letter. Lauren admitted something she had never said before. She hadn't hated me. She had compared herself to me for so long that she eventually convinced herself my stability had somehow stolen her happiness. Reading those words didn't erase what she'd done, but it helped me understand it. Understanding isn't forgiveness. It's simply seeing the truth more clearly. A week later, I agreed to meet her, not at my house, not at hers, a small coffee shop halfway between us. She looked nervous when she walked in. Older, quieter. We talked for almost an hour. Mostly about Ethan, Mom, work, ordinary things. When we stood to leave, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I don't expect us to be sisters again," I answered honestly. "I don't know what will become," she nodded. "That's fair." For the first time in a long while, fair felt like enough. Mom changed too. Slowly, painfully. One evening, she came over while Ethan was at baseball practice. She sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee she barely touched. "I owe you an apology." I looked up. "I kept asking you to be the bigger person." She shook her head. "I never realized I was asking you to carry everyone else's responsibility." She wiped at her eyes. "I thought keeping the peace was love. It isn't." "No." She smiled sadly. "Sometimes keeping the peace only protects the person causing the damage." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That conversation healed something I hadn't realized was still broken. Ethan continued seeing a child therapist for several months. At first, he blamed himself. If I hadn't recorded the video, he said one afternoon, none of this would have happened. I knelt in front of him. "No, sweetheart. It would have happened anyway. You just helped us see the truth before it got worse." He thought about that for a long time. "So, I didn't ruin the family?" I felt tears sting my eyes. "The people who lied made those choices. You didn't. You told the truth." He wrapped his arms around me. I held him tighter than I ever had. Free year. The following spring, Ethan asked if he could join a filmmaking class at the Community Arts Center. Of course, I said yes. He spent months learning camera angles, editing, and storytelling. At the end of the semester, families gathered to watch the students' final projects. Ethan's film was only 6 minutes long. It told the story of a little boy walking across a wooden bridge. The boy noticed a large crack. Everyone else kept walking. Nobody wanted to hear bad news. So, the boy stopped shouting. Instead, he quietly blocked the entrance until someone finally looked. The bridge never collapsed because someone had been brave enough to tell the truth. When the lights came back on, parents applauded. Ethan walked over and slipped his hand into mine. "Mom? Yeah? Do you think telling the truth always fixes things?" I smiled. "No. Sometimes the truth breaks things first." He frowned. "Then why tell it?" I looked at my son, the little boy who had unknowingly saved his own future with a shaky video recorded in a hallway. "Because some things have to break before they can be rebuilt the right way." He smiled. "I like that ending." "So do I. Because it wasn't really the ending. It was the beginning of a life built on something stronger than appearances. Stronger than manipulation. Stronger than fear. It was built on truth. And no one could ever take that away from us again. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Do you believe forgiveness and accountability can exist at the same time? Share your perspective in the comments. And if you enjoy stories about resilience, justice, and second chances, please subscribe and join us for the next journey.